Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and just spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and I've got a very special guest with me today. He is an OVW original, Ohio Valley Wrestling, former OVW heavyweight champion, former OVW hardcore champion. He's worked for numerous promotions other than OVW. I'm talking about the WWE, WCW, even got his start in Tennessee. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Worked with some of the greats. I'm pleased to welcome the one and only Frank Miller, a.k.a. Trailer Park Trash. Frank, welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
How you doing, buddy? It's nice to be on here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So
Took us a while to get through this, Stanley, but we made it.
Yes, we did. We made it, and we're here, and that's just unbelievable. It's so awesome. So let's talk about your upbringing and childhood. Where are you from?
I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
Born and raised. My childhood was a little iffy, but I was born in Louisville in the Highlands area, Germantown Highlands area. And we lived around that area up till I was about in 77. So actually I was 6 years old. My mom had remarried, and we had moved to Texas, Corpus Christi, but we didn't stay there long. Come back home. 12, when I turned 12, we moved to Las Vegas. Lived out there till I was 15, and I come back home. And when I come back home, and I always watched wrestling growing up. That was the Saturday thing around here. Saturdays at noon, I believe. I can't remember what channels it started on, but I remember when WDRB really first started to get going. That was one of the channels back here with wrestling. And Presto the Magic Clown was on there. It's pretty cool. But so 15, so I think I was about 18, 19 when I got Golden Gardens and whatnot, and then heard about Danny opening up a school. So.
Yeah, Louisville was a very big area for pro wrestling. You had a lot of people like Bill Dundee, Jerry Lawler, Jackie Fargo, Tojo Yamamoto, Jerry Jarrett. A lot of people came through that area as well over the time, like Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, and so many others. Really was
pretty much everybody at some point. Anybody that would be known this day, or anybody people can look up that was known back in the day, all come through. Which, in those days, Louisville was part of the Memphis territory, so they all come through the Memphis territory, which was Louisville.
Yeah, Nick Goulas had owned it, and later on Jerry Jarrett took it over. If anybody wants to read up on Memphis wrestling, you can find information online on the internet, or check out Memphis Heat, which is an incredible documentary if you haven't watched it.
It is, and Memphis wrestling was, me growing up, that's all there was. I didn't know anything about Georgia, Texas. I didn't know anything about any other wrestling. Cable TV wasn't out yet, so unless you had traveled a lot or just what, depending on the area you lived in, but we just had Memphis wrestling for a long time. So, but Memphis wrestling was so unique in the way that their storylines. You didn't have to be, 6'8" and be a big muscle bound freak that lived in the gym. People believed, and I did growing up. You believed in their characters. You believed that's who they were. I remember as a little kid, my mom would take me down because a lot of times couldn't afford to go to the wrestling matches. But she would take me down early so we could sit and watch them come in. Just so I could see them. And I remember the feelings I would get seeing Dennis Condrey when I was real little. I always scared the shit out of me.
Really?
Just watching him get out of his car and go into the building. He was just as, that's kind of that. That's how good he was at being a heel.
So amazing. A lot of people were just so into it. I mean, they'd boo the bad guys, they cheer the good guys. Really, like a lot of crowd participation. That's what makes up professional wrestling.
Growing up, you had to get tickets that Tuesday for the following Tuesday. Ringside, you can never get. Ringside was the same people I remember growing up for years. The same people said ringside. I remember that gentleman. I never knew his real name, but they called him Grandpa. And he was ringside and give all the wrestlers hell for years, 30 years or better. And then we had that in OVW. We had our group of we had our fan base that come to every show because in those days OVW we did the impossible. We was running 3 to 5 shows a night, the same damn area. We couldn't even. You'd go to Bedford, Kentucky, but 30 miles. E-Town might have been the farthest we went, back in those days. But everything was, we'd go from Jeffersonville to Dixie Highway, which is probably 10, 15 miles, but still. That's we drew at each show.
Yeah, you guys definitely had a lot of experience with traveling. OVW definitely was a perfect training ground. It still is. Have you watched the new documentary on Netflix?
No, honestly, I don't watch anything wrestling anymore. It's just different, and it's not, and I'm not going to knock it because it's, different generation, different times, and everybody has a different cup of tea. So, hey, God bless you, do the best you can, and I hope everybody gets to be able to live their dream like I did. That's the main thing. But no, I haven't watched it. Like I said, I haven't watched a wrestling match outside of some of my own that's been sent to me by people and whatnot, because I don't really even have a lot of stuff on tape. I never was a very big person in picture taking with guys or having a lot of film of them. Now, early on, Danny give you films of your matches early on. That's how you went home and then you studied your matches. It wasn't. He was constantly learning. He was constantly training, whether he was at a match or he was at home. Doing interviews, you learn. You stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself and start cutting promos. And that's how you tried. That's how you tried to start learning. To do those things. You had to take initiative, not just go to class and go home. You have to take it that and it become your life. Just kind of like what I'm doing now. It's the same thing. You have to devote your life to it if you want to be successful. And my goal was to make it to Memphis. Everything after that was just icing on the cake. But my goal was to make it to Memphis, and I was in heaven. I didn't. The little bit of time in WWE wasn't really enjoyable because again, it was very stressful. Everybody walked around with pins and needles and whatnot. And I was more of the old Memphis style. That was my cup of tea. Those were amazing days. And I'm not going to get too deep in my childhood, but I didn't have a very good one, to say the least. I have good memories, but as a whole, I really didn't have a very good childhood at all. I had a very abusive alcoholic stepfather, very mental and physically abusive and whatnot. So wrestling to me was the 1 hour a week to get away from reality. I guess that was of course as a little kid you have your adults saying, "Oh, that shit's fake," and then you had the people that loved it too and whatnot. But
exactly,
I know for a long time growing up, I spent the weekends at my grandparents' house, my father's parents. And that was one thing. My grandma, if I went to the track with my grandpa that morning to the racetrack, it was always made sure I was home by noon at Saturday so I could watch wrestling because that was my getaway.
Who were your
and
favorite?
So you just loved it growing up, and I would sit there and daydream about being one of them and, being out on the road. And you believed all the stories, you believed everything. So, you just thought, wow, man, I would, what I would do to be one of those guys.
Who were your favorites growing up to watch?
Jackie Fargo. The youngest memories I have is Jackie Fargo as babyface, and a guy named Giveaway. He was Big Bad John. Guy same character. Big Bad John also I believe was the Bicentennial Baby for a little bit. And I think I'm talking 1976. So I was like 5 years old. But because I think that was the Bicentennial, and that's why he probably had that gimmick. I'm assuming. I never really looked it up. But I know he also was the Bicentennial Baby, Big Bad John, guys like that. Let's say Dennis Condrey. Then as time went on a little bit, and then come Jimmy Hart. I mean, man, all of them guys. You loved it. As you got older and got in the business, I respected them even more of how good they were. That you made you love. You just couldn't hate. You hated them with a passion, or you just loved them to death. Man, it was great. It was believable. You just in those days, kayfabe was observed. I was fortunate enough when I got in the business, it was still old school. it wasn't, Danny was the first open school I know of that ever offered any kind of training for wrestling. And not everybody made it, but Danny gave everybody a venue to, hey, come and try to at least live your dream, give you the opportunity. So, but yeah, those guys growing up, man, I can't think of. There are so many of them, but like I said, Jackie Fargo is my youngest memories of the first one I just really fell in love with. And then Jerry Lawler, I remember, again, maybe talking 4 or 5 years old, I remember wrestling with my brothers, and I would wear a tank top so I could pull the strap down. I just started going to do the Jerry Lawler thing, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, and like you said, you got to meet your idols and you eventually went on the road and we talked a little bit about, OVW, but like when you started becoming a wrestler, I've had so many people talk about the training process. What was your experience like as far as training goes?
Well, now you got to understand, I was completely different kid. I was very shy, very very shy, and not to everybody in all things, but if I knew you, I'd be myself. But I was very shy to people I didn't know. Danny Davis will tell you the day I went to meet him to talk about joining the school, I couldn't even look at him in the eyes. I was looking down, nervous wreck, scared kid. But so I wasn't really into weightlifting or anything at that time. I was I think 19-year-old kid partying, drinking, smoking pot, raising hell. Wasn't really in shape at all. So it was really tough on me because, but it was the best thing that happened to me too. But it was rough, man, in the beginning. The ring is not what a lot of people thought it was in those days. The
Hmm.
ring was hard, man. It had some give to it, but it was hard. Those damn ropes, the ropes were just a wire cable running through a damn garden hose, and that shit was stretched tight by the buckles in the corner, man. I remember the first night I learned how to hit the ropes. The next morning, my back looked like somebody probably just took a kendo stick and beat on me all night long.
Oh,
I mean, I had
goodness.
bruises from the lines of the ropes just because my body wasn't used to it. So I mean, it was tough. I literally got the shit beat out of me for a long time. It was, Danny didn't take. Danny did everything the right way though. Danny wasn't abusive, but Danny toughened you up, or you was going to quit. You were going to make it, or you wasn't. It was up to you. But he didn't take it easy on you. Everybody was treated the same. Uh, and then if you wanted to work more, you could always stay after. And a lot of us did that. Class might be 2 or 3 hours, 7 days a week. And the days we had shows, we had class earlier that day. If he was working, tough shit. Yeah, take off work. Whatever, but be there because that's how you learn. And everybody start. You would. Once you're there for a little bit, then you would start going, help set up the ring for the shows and whatnot. You did everything. Then you went from that to security guard, things of that nature. And then I don't know if everybody started out at Danny's the intern, but I know a bunch of people did. And that's what I started out as. The intern, you just wore the like the doctor's outfit with the mask, So uh, man, but the training was pretty rough for a while. And then but you were young, man. We didn't really care. That was the thing. It toughened you up quick if you wasn't tough, or it made you quit. A few things happened pretty quick because it was pretty hard. I mean, it wasn't like it was when Danny trained. I mean, man, I've heard stories of back in those days. Back in the late 50s, 60s, whatnot. Man, they were brutal. They
Yeah.
were real brutal.
Hmm.
So I mean, but it wasn't where people was beating on you. But in the ring, I remember Danny. I bet Danny chopped me maybe 50, 60 times one night in the match, and I was never allowed
Wow.
to give it to him back. You was never allowed to do nothing until you learned how to take it. But Danny had a way of teaching you. I always called him like old Mr. Miyagi in a way. He had a way of teaching you shit. You didn't know you was learning, then all of a sudden you just, oh, okay. Oh. And that's the thing. You either got it or you didn't, and it's hard to explain that. But you either get it or you don't, And if you get it mentally, then you learn the psychology part of it, and boom, man, you're rocking and rolling. Uh, if you don't, it's rough on you.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you got that old school kind of experience with how to work and how to sell and how to how to move in the ring and work with your opponent. It's
Well, that's where the psychology now was. I never tried to brag on a lot of anything, but I could sell. That was one thing I was really, really good at, and that's why I worked a lot of, especially in the early days, a lot of the WWE guys that were sent to us. Myself, several of us, there's a handful of us who worked those guys a lot. We wasn't their per se actual trainers, but they got training with us in the ring because, we knew for one, you didn't hurt them. They're WWE guys. You got to protect them, but you had to teach them. And those guys in those days, John Cena, Randy Orton, Lesnar, those guys, I guarantee you that, I know they all respect and love their days in OVW, but I think a lot of those guys are still in the business today because of that. Because, you learn the old way, you learn the tough way, and, you learn the old school, and that gives you longevity in the business. Because if you got it, then you learn how to protect yourself. But if you didn't get it, you might not last 2 or 3 years, and then boom, you're probably broke and working as a cashier somewhere.
yeah, I
So
mean,
because those guys, we trained in a dungeon, man. It was no air, summertime, hottest piss. Not much heat to say of in the wintertime, and I think honestly, I think the story behind that is I think Jim Ross, who was the head of the developmental program, I believe at the time with Cornette, who was here with us and Danny and whatnot. But I think Jim Ross had come to visit one time and come to the arena, and he said, "Vince can't see this." It's had to move, had to move to a better facility because he thought, this is a little bit too rough. But I mean, I think it's great. He toughened you up. It showed how much kind of like desire he was going to, you build a lot of desire because, the last thing you want to do is, be there the rest of your life. Not OVW, but just in that facility.
well, you definitely want to move up after a year or two learning the basics. And so many people got successful from the developmental territory, the developmental camp, like a Cena, like a Brock, like a Randy Orton, like a Batista. Almost all those guys from that class made it to that upper tier of WWE in just a span of a few years. What was tell me about your story? Were you under a developmental contract with WWE?
We were There were a bunch of us that got it because we going to get it no matter what, so to speak. But kind of knew, like me, and I messed myself up a lot. I was a pretty wild person in those days, and I wouldn't blame anybody for giving me a full fledged contract neither, as far as that goes, because I was kind of a wild card. You don't want to bring bad attention to anything. I was involved in a big police chase back in those days here in town and got in trouble for it and whatnot. And, that just ain't the kind of publicity somebody like that wanted, especially in that time when they were, the Attitude Era. I think 70-80% of their main roster, Attitude Era, was guys from here. Something like that. I was told percentage wise. I know a lot of their stars at that time were guys from here, Cena and all them, but I don't remember exactly percentage, but it was up there pretty high. Wow. But like I said, I was one of those. I was happy no matter where I was at because I was in the business. That's what mattered to me. And like I said, Memphis was my goal from day one. If I can make Memphis TV, then man, I made it. And that was, and the first day I walked in there, I'm not calling anybody old, but at this point, get mad if you want. Some of these guys got pissed back in the day, but when I walked in the TV station that morning, man, it was a surreal moment because I was all of a sudden I was in the locker room with guys I grew up watching on TV. Same guys. Handsome Jimmy was there, Lawler, Dundee, Dutch. My God, who wasn't there? They were doing pretty good at that time too, business wise. So I think we had Rocky. The Rock was there. I think that's when he was he Rocky Maivia? I can't remember what he was doing at that time.
But I think it was Flex Cabana. That's what
Flex
he went
Cabana,
by Memphis.
Flex Cabana.
Yes.
Yeah, Flex Cabana. Man, those are great times.
Who would have thought that he would have become such a mega movie star in Hollywood?
I knew it early on when I see. Of course, he looked great, and he was very, that was the thing. If you had charisma and could speak and had the looks, it really didn't matter if you could wrestle. You know, but he could obviously as well too. But I remember, you know, some days in WWE, you know, I'd be just walking around the locker room, you know, and they would have him off, you know, man, like all day long because we had to be there. Like I think it was Raw, you had to be there like 1 o'clock the damn afternoon. You know, and they had food, you know, and all that. You know, they took care of you, but you had to be there early. So I would just walk around and stuff and whatnot. And they always had him, man. He was off by himself in a room with you know, acting coaches and people coaching him on the speaking and whatnot. So you knew then, you know, man, if they're investing that kind of time, you know, and money in this guy. And he was already pretty popular at that point. Mm-hmm. So you knew, and that was always a goal. Vince always had a goal of like wanting his guys in movies anyway. That was like a little thing he was, you know, you know, I don't know if it was private or not, how many people knew about it, but Vince wanted, you know, get his top guys in the movies because the more over you become, the more you're going to business you are for him. Yeah. Vince was very business.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of those guys from Memphis became huge in the WWE and the national scene, and it's so cool to see their start where they became stars from. It's unbelievable. It's so awesome.
Yeah, well, like, you know, even in the 80s and the honky tonk man, you know, people don't realize you look back Wayne Ferris back in the 70s, you know, Memphis, part of the Blondes, in the First Family. And, you know, there's guys back then you would, and if you looked at him back then, you wouldn't even look like, don't even look like honky. You know, but there are a lot of guys that become different characters when they went up there, and people didn't, you know, put two and two together for a while.
Right.
Coco Beware, you know, he kept the same name, but, you know, completely different gimmick. He goes up to Memphis and he's the Birdman, you know, Coco Beware. Coco was big around here for a long time.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite opponents that you got to work with?
Viscera. Well, I mean, my all-time favorite person to work with or work against would be Flash Flanagan. So let me get that off the top. That's my brother, man. You know, I love him. And we just had the best matches together. We just clicked. You know, for whatever reason, we clicked, and so all my, you know, all my best matches was with him. But you know, some of my favorite people I like to work. Viscera, I loved working Viscera. Man, we had good times. He was a big old boy too.
Oh yeah,
I got to work him a lot when he was in Memphis. When he was King Mabel at that time. That was before Viscera. Yeah, he was King Mabel when I worked him in Memphis. Viscera, man, I got Kane. I worked Kane a few times. I like working Kane. You know, I don't know if it was how I carried myself with a lot of those guys or what, but you know, I got along with a lot of those guys, you know, pretty good. Yeah. You know, of course, I didn't go in there with, you know, any kind of attitude or whatnot. I went in there like, you know, hell, I'm not shit. I'm low man. You know, that's just how it is. But all that coming to my teachings from Danny and Rip and that especially Rip. You know, be there on time. You know, shut the F up and do what you're told. So I think that helped me go a long way, especially in Memphis. You know, it's kind of like I had a little bit of respect when I first got there, just because Danny Davis taught me, and you know, Danny's not going to. Back in those days, trainers were kind of responsible for, you know, the people they send out there, because, like I said, there wasn't schools everywhere. So a lot of ways to get in the business in those days is a veteran would, you know, take you under his wing and then go from there. But that person was kind of responsible for you. So if you went out there and act like an idiot, the heat comes back on your trainer. And it was the same way with Danny. And Danny wasn't very big on sending guys out, you know, because Danny was very protective of his reputation.
Right.
So I think that helped any of us that got sent to Memphis right off. Or not right off, but when we got sent down there, that helped us, you know, right off the bat as far as being there, because, you know, some guys went to Memphis, didn't handle themselves very well, and they wasn't there very long. You know, Memphis was kind of cliquish, so you didn't have to be in their clique, but you know, you could still be accepted if you didn't act like an idiot. Yeah, pretty much, and do your job, man. But go back to your question. I'm sorry. I've had a lot of concussions, and I can talk, so I'll get to rambling, and we'll go.
Oh, it's okay.
We'll go into 4 different subjects before I answer your question. But yeah, King Mabel was probably my favorite. I loved working him. Kane, like working Kane. Man, like there's so many in those days. We worked so much, 5, 6, 7 days a week, all the time. That was another reason that people like to come to OVW, because you got the experience. You worked so much. It wasn't even WWE in those days. Them guys might actually not had 2 or 3 days of ring work. The rest of it's appearances and all that other bullshit. So you got the experience here, man.
Well, you definitely seems like, you lived your dream. You achieved your goal by getting on Memphis television, and seems like you had a really, really good time there, and you've had a great career. Just reading your bio and getting the chance to talk with you.
Well, man, growing up on the streets, a street kid, and I get to go to Japan. I lived in Puerto Rico lived there once, basically about 6 months, and then went back a few times. I've been to so many different places that I would have never been to if it wasn't for business. In the business, I credit Danny Davis for everything I'm today. He took a wise ass, little shy punk, and made a man out of me, because I raised my daughter. I got custody of her. I took her when she was 18 months old, and I think through courts finally got paperwork full custody when she was like 4. But I've had her since she was 18 months old. So I raised her by myself. And did a very good job with that. She's grown into a nice woman, nice young woman, married a good kid. A couple kids. I got a couple grandkids. And she's doing great. So, but anyway, I would have never been strong enough or responsible enough of a person to do that if it was not for the business and Danny Davis.
Outside of the United States, what country was your favorite to wrestle in?
Puerto Rico, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico could be rough too.
Oh yeah.
But it was because the fans were in it. I was told that, at that time when I was in Puerto Rico, the first time anyway, I was told that the fans' reactions down there was like it was in the 70s Memphis. So, and it was, man, it was awesome. Just the way wow, wow. It was, but boy, I was a heel, so you had to be careful. They throw shit at you. So you had to be careful, man. People try to stick you with shit when you're going in and out. It was pretty crazy, but man, I love working down there. I stayed down there for 6 months. Left from home. Had to take care of the running from the police bullshit, and it was a DUI, mainly over DUI. But anyway, I made mistakes, and so I had to come back and deal with that, and then got back to work in OVW, and then I went down there a couple more times. I went down there to work with my buddy Flash for Savio Vega for the Christmas shows. Went down there for a 10-day deal, I think it was. Yeah, just the fans' reactions down there is great. It's like, and once you're on TV down there, the whole damn island knows you. Because everybody watches it. If you're a boxer, play baseball, or a wrestler on TV in Puerto Rico, man, they all know who the hell you are, because that's all they watch. So it was that was as far as the fan base went, I loved working down
Yeah, they definitely seem to take the wrestling seriously in other parts of the country or in other parts of the world, because it's a whole
there. Yeah,
other
man.
animal. It really is. They really get.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like down there now, but when I was in Puerto Rico, there was still a lot of fan base that believed it. Still believed,
Mhm.
and they grew up. But hell, they have an idol down there, Carlos Colon. That island. There's people down there that they've known him from birth. Just so it's kind of bred into them as they grow up. Really,
Yeah. It's in the blood.
pretty much in the blood.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears and talk about the stuff that you've done in your community. I know you've done a lot of charity work and volunteering outside of wrestling. Tell me about some of the partnerships that you've worked with outside of wrestling as far as charity is concerned, charity
Well,
work is
really,
concerned.
wrestling has a lot to do with a lot of things we used to do. I used to really get involved. Expect anything to do with the kid, I'm on it. I will do anything. And back in the day, we used to do benefits all the time, fundraisers, where we donate the gate, the door for whatever reason calls. I mean, there was a time when I was running OVW, there was a time Danny put me aside. Danny was all for it too. But hey kid, I'm all good for what you're doing, but we got to run some shows and keep the doors open too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I was all for it, man. If somebody died, when they were having issues, if it was a wrestling fan or somebody that somebody knew that was, it was word of mouth. Hey, man, oh, my cousin died, and they're having problems there. On the show, let's have a show, man. Get the word out. Benefit. We'll give you the door. We did that a lot.
Yeah, it's
And I
awesome.
would get involved in anything in the community as far as here's more, especially as I've gotten older. Um, help anybody out. I'm all for helping anybody anymore. This world's tough, man. So we don't need to be against each other. It's okay to disagree, but you don't have to hate each other. But mainly it was mainly a lot to do with wrestling shows. We would put on benefits for. There was a kid here that was murdered. It was pretty high profile murder back then. Also, we did did a benefit for his father. Um, and whatnot, tried to help with that, funeral service, or we just, kids at hospitalization. I think you're the most recent. There was a kid, one of my horse owners, somebody they knew that had a kid that's, I think was in Florida and found out it had something pretty bad,
Wow.
cancer going on. So, a huge wrestling fan. The kid was a huge wrestling fan. So, I reached out to a few people, and then how that picks up pretty quick. And also, a lot of these guys that he knew is start tweeting him and stuff and sending him what's his. And I'm terrible if I go to say the next something else. I've had a lot of concussions, so my brain don't function as well as it used to, and it wasn't great then. But oh, Dustin Rhodes, Dusty's son, not Dustin, the other one.
Cody.
Cody Rhodes actually did a little video and sent to the kid. So that anything, and people don't think charity don't have to be something to do with money. Charities anything. Charities just helping somebody out. If something like that, I'll thank you for what. I made a few phone calls. I didn't do nothing, but it made that kid's life for a little bit. So
Yeah,
that's what matters.
it does. Why do you feel passionate what does it mean to you to help someone, in your opinion?
Well, honestly, for a long time, I was trying to reverse all the wrongs I did. Like I said, I never was no angel back in the day, and I don't deny any mistakes I made. I never did anything to hurt anybody. So I wasn't a thief. So let's get that out there. I was just pretty wild drinking and raising hell and whatnot. But anyway, for a long time, like I said, I thought it was just trying to right the wrongs of the past. But if I could help somebody, it just makes me feel good. Any more, it's who I am. I mean, from opening doors, it don't matter. If I give you damn shirt off my back if you needed it more than I do. And I do without. You can ask. I don't even call my employees, my team that works for me here at the barn. I give them. It's all they love working for me because I try to keep everybody happy. I don't know if I could put a smile on somebody's face, it makes my day. It's like, man, it's try to find another purpose besides just getting the sheet beat out of you all the time. And
Yeah.
I love what I do now. I was raised around the horses a little bit growing up, and been training horses for 17 years now, but full time last 8 years now, I guess again. But I love what I do, and they make me feel good. I deal with a lot of things, a lot of depression and stuff sometimes. So that's the horses make me all better.
Yeah.
But everybody around here at the track, how you are always happy. Got to be anymore, man.
See,
you can't let the world get to you because you'll just be depressed all the time.
no, and like you said, first it was wrestling, now it's horses, and anything that can provide some enjoyment for you is a good thing because it's a
Yeah,
distraction from the crazy
exactly.
world that we live in today. So,
Exactly, and that's exactly what I tell them. I said, if I start thinking about what's going on around me, man, I'll be depressed as hell. I said, I don't. I just
yeah,
like trying to stay happy. What the hell,
yeah,
going to be 53 years old. I've lived a full life already. hopefully I still got some time left. I want to see my grandkids grow up. I love my grandkids to death. My little grandson, he's my granddaughter's still a little baby yet. She's a little scared of Peppa at the moment. I think it's the gray stuff on the face, but she'll get out of that. My little grandson, he's 6, and I just love that boy to death. So, I'm tearing up even thinking about it. I love that little shit. So, but I've always been that way about kids, man. Anything about and I think a lot of that's because of the way I grew up.
Yeah.
So, anything I could do for kids, and I've said that it's out there today, and it still goes today. If anybody, there's anything I could do that would put a smile on a kid's face, or something I could be involved in to raise a few bucks, kid needs a surgery or anything, I'm all on it. All anybody got to do is pick up the phone and call me. So.
Well, Frank, this has been wonderful getting the chance to talk with you. It means a lot to me and to the listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you? Do you have a website or social media that you want to plug?
Well, man, social media is different. I've got a Twitter. X now, whatever the hell I didn't even know it's how updated I get. I just updated my phone yesterday, and I still call it Twitter because that's what my app showed, but I haven't updated. So then all of a sudden it tells us X on there, and it's that's Twitter. I've got a Twitter. I think it's JF Miller Racing. I think I'm on Facebook. I've got a racing page on Facebook. I think it's JF Miller Racing. But I'm stable here at trackside at Churchill Downs year round. I was going to the fairgrounds for a while in the winters, but man, that's pretty much what I do. I'm at the racetrack 7 days a week now. My full name is Jerome Miller, so that's what you would see in the program. But that's what I do, and it's around the church, and I'm pretty well known around this area. So,
well, Frank, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Hey, I appreciate it. Have me back anytime, buddy.
All right, will do. Take care.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.